I used to think the worst kind of betrayal came from strangers, people you never knew, people you never trusted. I was wrong. The worst kind comes from someone who sat across from you, listened to your secrets, and said, "You can tell me anything." My name is Claire, and this is the story of how I lost my marriage, not to another woman, but to the woman I trusted most. Her name was Melissa. If you had met us back then, you would have said we were inseparable, the kind of friendship people envy. We met in our late 20s, at a point in life where friendships aren't just about fun anymore, they're about survival. She was loud where I was quiet, confident where I was unsure, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and own it without trying. I was drawn to that. I think, in a way, I needed it. We built a routine without even trying. Coffee on Saturdays, late-night phone calls, random texts during the day that meant nothing and everything at the same time. She became my person. And then there was Daniel, my husband. We had been married for 6 years when everything began to change, though I didn't realize it at the time. Daniel wasn't a bad man. He was steady, predictable, the kind of man you build a life with, not the kind you write poems about. And for a long time that was enough for me. But somewhere along the way, the small cracks started forming. Nothing dramatic, nothing you could point at and say, "This is where it broke." It was in the silence, the way conversations became shorter, the way he stopped asking how my day was, the way we could sit in the same room and feel like strangers passing through each other's lives. I noticed it, of course I did. But instead of talking to him, I talked to her. At first it felt harmless. I would call Melissa and say things like, "He's just been distant lately," or, "I don't know, something feels off." She would listen, always listen, and then she would say the things I needed to hear. "You deserve better than that. He should be paying attention to you. That's not normal, Claire." And slowly, without realizing it, I started seeing my marriage through her eyes instead of my own. That's the thing nobody tells you. When you share your relationship with someone else, you're not just telling a story. You're handing them perspective. And perspective is powerful. I began telling her more. The arguments, the frustrations, the things Daniel said that hurt me, the things he didn't say, even the private things, the kind of things that should have stayed between two people trying to figure each other out. I thought I was just venting. I didn't realize I was slowly giving her a map to my marriage. Melissa started coming around more. At first it made sense. She was my best friend. Of course she would visit. Of course she would sit in our living room, laugh at our jokes, share meals with us. Daniel liked her. Why wouldn't he? She was easy to talk to. She listened. She noticed things I had stopped noticing, or maybe things I was too tired to notice anymore. There were moments, small ones, that I brushed off. The way she would laugh a little too long at something he said. The way he would look at her when she spoke, really look at her, like he was interested again. I told myself I was imagining it, because the alternative, was too uncomfortable to face. And besides, she was my friend. My friend would never do that to me, right? Things didn't fall apart overnight. There was no single moment where everything exploded. It was quieter than that, slower, like watching something sink, inch by inch, until one day you realize it's already gone. Daniel became more distant, not angry, not cold, just unavailable, like he had already started leaving, even though he was still physically there. And Melissa, she was still right beside me, listening, comforting, advising. But something about her advice started to change. It became sharper, more certain. Claire, I don't think he respects you. Honestly, I wouldn't tolerate that. You need to start thinking about yourself for once. And I believed her, because she had all the information, because I had given it to her. Every piece, every weakness, every flaw. One night I remember sitting in my car after leaving her apartment. She had just told me, very calmly, that maybe Daniel and I weren't right for each other anymore. That sometimes people grow apart. That maybe I deserved something different. And as I drove home, something inside me shifted. Not because she was right, but because I trusted her enough to believe she couldn't be wrong. The distance between Daniel and I grew wider. Conversations turned into arguments. Arguments turned into silence. And silence became normal. Then came the moment I still replay in my head, over and over again, trying to understand how I didn't see it. I walked into my own living room and saw them sitting together. Nothing inappropriate, nothing obvious, just close, too close. The kind of closeness that doesn't happen overnight, the kind that builds, in conversations you weren't part of, in moments you didn't witness, in trust that was never meant to exist between them. I remember the way they both looked at me, like I had interrupted something, like I was the one out of place, in my own home. That was the first time I felt it, not suspicion, not confusion, clarity. But even then, I didn't want to believe it, so I didn't. We tried to fix things, or at least I thought we were trying. Counseling was mentioned, promises were made, but it all felt empty, like reading lines from a script neither of us believed in anymore. And then, one day, Daniel told me he wanted a divorce. No anger, no drama, just a quiet decision, as if it had already been made long before he said the words out loud. I asked him why. I needed to hear it, needed something I could hold on to. And he said something that still echoes in my mind. I don't feel understood anymore. Understood. That word. The same word I had been chasing in someone else. The divorce was quick, clean, efficient, just like the end of something that had already been over. And Melissa, she was there for me, at least in the beginning, checking on me, calling me, sitting with me while I cried, telling me I would be okay. And then she slowly disappeared, less calls, less messages, more distance. The same pattern, but this time I noticed. It didn't take long for the truth to surface. It never does. People talk, things slip, and eventually you don't need proof anymore, because deep down you already know. They were together, Daniel and Melissa. The man I built a life with, and the woman who knew every crack in it. I wish I could tell you I confronted them, that I screamed, that I demanded answers. But I didn't. Because by then, there was nothing left to fight for. You can't compete with someone who knows all your weaknesses, because you were the one who showed them. The years that followed were heavy. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just heavy. I carried the weight of it everywhere. The regret, the questions, the quiet realization that I had played a part in my own heartbreak. Not because I deserved it, but because I didn't protect what should have been protected. I rebuilt slowly, painfully, piece by piece. I learned how to be alone again, how to sit in silence without it feeling like something was missing, how to trust myself instead of outsourcing my thoughts to someone else. And over time, I found something I hadn't had in years: peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from understanding, from acceptance, from letting go of what you can't change. I moved on, not in a dramatic, life-changing way, just quietly, day by day. Until one day, I realized I wasn't thinking about them anymore. And then, years later, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. And when I did, I heard her voice. Melissa. It had been years, but I knew it instantly. She didn't sound like herself. The confidence was gone, the certainty. All the things that once made her seem so untouchable were missing. She asked me how I was, as if we were old friends catching up, as if nothing had happened. And then, after a pause, she said it. "I need to talk to you." I didn't say anything. I just listened. And what she told me was something I never expected. Daniel had changed. Or maybe he hadn't. Maybe this was who he had always been, distant, unreachable, unfaithful, in ways that weren't obvious at first. The same patterns, the same silence, the same emotional absence. And then she said something that stayed with me. "He talks about me the same way he used to talk about you." And in that moment, everything came full circle. She told me she was sorry, that she didn't understand back then, that she thought she was helping, that she thought it would be different. And now she was asking for forgiveness. After everything, after all those years, she wanted peace. And I sat there, holding the phone, realizing something I hadn't expected. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I used to be, but I also wasn't ready to say the words she wanted to hear. because forgiveness isn't something you give just because someone asks. It's something you arrive at, slowly, honestly, in your own time. And I didn't know if I had arrived yet. So I told her the truth. I'm not there yet. And for the first time in a long time, I chose myself. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but out of respect for the version of me that had to rebuild from nothing. We ended the call quietly. No closure, no resolution, just honesty. And maybe that was enough. Because sometimes the lesson isn't about what they did. It's about what you allowed, what you shared, what you gave away, thinking it was safe. So if you're listening to this and you have someone in your life you trust, be careful what you share, because not everyone who listens is protecting you. Some people are learning you, and not everyone who stands beside you is standing for you. Sometimes they're just waiting, and by the time you realize it, they already know everything they need to take your place.